Welcome to UB Medicine Podcast, where we explore science shaping tomorrow's healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. Allison Brashear, Dean of the Jacobs School of Medicine and Biomedical Sciences. Today, we're diving into a topic that's transforming research and patient care alike: artificial intelligence in medicine. So AI is changing the game, from modeling molecules to predicting disease risk. And right here in Western New York, UB researchers are leading the charge. Joining me today are two UB experts: Dr. Thomas Grant, Assistant Professor of Structural Biology, who uses AI and advanced X-ray scattering to see proteins in motion and accelerate drug discovery, and Dr. Vince Titino, Assistant Professor of Pathology and Anatomical Sciences, and he uses AI to analyze brain vessel images and identify patients at the highest risk for aneurysms. Welcome to you both. First, we're going to start talking about the molecular side. UB researchers are tapping into Empire AI. It's a top-level computing power to actually see proteins in motion, a breakthrough that matters because understanding how proteins move helps us design better drugs and more precise treatments. And for those of our listeners that don't know, Empire AI is the largest academic computing system in the country. Now, Dr. Grant, first, before we jump in, I just want our listeners to know that if they pick up this week's Science, that there's an interview and you are quoted heavily about your work. Congratulations. So with that, we're going to talk a little bit about how you have begun to study proteins and how they move, and the techniques about like SWAX, and I'm just going to let you go with the alphabet here, and how you see things at the molecular level, which is just really fascinating.
Yeah, it's really, AI has been transforming our field. And a few years ago, Google DeepMind released an AI called AlphaFold. And this has transformed structural biology. So in order to understand the impact this has, we kind of first have to understand what structural biology is. And so if you think of your cells in your body, they're carrying out all these functions. They're digesting food, and they're moving muscles, and they're sending electrical signals and fighting off viruses. And in order to do that, you have to have proteins that are carrying out these functions. So the goal of structural biology is to figure out how these little molecular machines work. We're trying to essentially figure out the atomic structure of proteins so that we can reverse engineer how these machines work. And once we do that, now we can do things like design drugs and hopefully cure diseases that are caused by proteins that aren't working right, these machines that are broken in some way. And AI has been extremely useful for this, because before AlphaFold, it would take years, months or years to figure out the structure of a protein experimentally, X-ray experiments that were very long and arduous and expensive. Now with AlphaFold, we can take something that used to take months, maybe years, into seconds or minutes. We can use AI to actually tell us and predict for us what the structure of a protein is. And that's incredibly transformative for our field.
And that will also help us with drug discoveries. For example, cystic fibrosis has a misfolding that allowed a drug to be discovered that, when I was in my training, people died from cystic fibrosis, and now they live full lives because of these medications. So how does this help us develop drugs? Because these proteins move, and we have to find the right drug that fits in the right place. So how can you just expand a little bit?
Yeah, so proteins are, like I said, they're like little molecular machines. And these machines have buttons and dials. And when you change a dial or you push a button, you end up changing the motion of the machine. And so what happens is sometimes there's problems with these proteins, with these machines. There's a mutation or there's something else wrong. And so the machine isn't working the way it's supposed to be. And so what medicines do and what drugs do is they go in there and they try and fix whatever the problem in the machine is. And so this is a way that we can use physics and chemistry to rationally design new medicines. And that's the sort of the holy grail or the hope of structural biology. And so tools like our tool called SWAXfold build on tools like AlphaFold by integrating extra information from SWAX experiments, which are like X-ray snapshots of proteins, so that we can understand how they move, how drugs can get in there and target particular poses or shapes of a molecule and be able to do things like cure or help alleviate diseases like cystic fibrosis.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't just mention that, structural biology kind of has its home here in the Hoffman Woodward Institute. It's now part of UB. And so this is just a natural building upon a great foundation that has been here in Buffalo. And now Empire AI is allowing us to do all of these incredible things. So congratulations on the work that you have, and we're looking forward to much of the work that you're going to do in the future, because I think we can really bring new treatments to people that are very much in need, and much, much more quickly. So we're going to switch a little bit here, because AI is not just about lab research, it's also about clinical care. And we've also been talking in past modules of this podcast, we've talked about, the EMR, but UB is also leading the way in AI-driven imaging and vascular modeling through an Empire AI initiative. So Dr. Tutino, how is AI being used in pathology and diagnostic workflows at UB?
Yeah, great question. It is really now being pervasively introduced into this field, right? On the pathology side, you see companies like PathAI coming out with new workflows to automatically detect disease, kind of working alongside the pathologist. But in the radiology space, where I do a lot of my research, you see companies who have technologies that basically analyze images for things that a radiologist or a neurointerventionalist might not pick up themselves, right? And so these are, kind of like AI assistants that are right there in the radiology suite with interventionalists who are either diagnosing diseases that they might not see, or helping predict, what might be the course of a disease or a malformation that it picks up.
So I just want to clarify, though, every time we use AI in the clinical realm, there's always a doctor or provider, an expert kind of oversight.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so while we use these tools to help predict and model, for example, is an aneurysm going to rupture? Is it done? There's always the physician involved, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think that really speaks to the fact that AI is a tool to provide better healthcare, to advance research expeditiously, but it's not going to replace anything that the clinicians or the researchers are going to do. They're just going to make it faster and more innovative.
Exactly. Yeah, we kind of refer to it as a co-pilot, and one of the things that I'm working on actually is spearheaded by a colleague of mine, Cyprian Ionita, in the Cannon Stroke and Vascular Research Center, is a software we call QAS, QAS, standing for Quantitative Angiographic Systems. It's a mouthful. But essentially what it does is it looks at the imaging, the diagnostic angiography. So this is looking at the flow of contrast in your blood vessels. And while your neurosurgeon is treating a brain aneurysm with like a little coil that is trying to put in the aneurysm, or a stent that is meant to divert the flow, the AI in the background looks at how the contrast in the blood flow is flowing through the aneurysm and is providing predictions on how thoroughly it is treated. And it gives this back to the clinician in real time. And so in that way, it's kind of, maybe giving them a tap on the shoulder. Oh, it needs a little bit more treatment, or what you have done is sufficient for it to be healed, a year down the line. Exactly, it's kind of like a co-pilot, but in the end, the doctor is always in the driver's seat. And that's how, the AI is being integrated into healthcare kind of across the board too.
And are there other ways for both of you that AI might be advancing, for example, imaging? People think about AI being used for dermatology or radiology, but again, there's always a physician there. Are there things beyond vascular disorders that people are doing here at UB?
Yeah, I think with cancer too, we're applying it to cancer. We're applying it to intracerebral hemorrhage. A lot of the new work with deep learning has to, is involved with what's called image segmentation. So finding out what are the boundaries of, let's say, a particular cancer, or the boundaries of an intracerebral hemorrhage, or what we do in my group a lot is look at stroke. So where's the clot that has caused the stroke? And then once you can automatically do that with this deep learning, you can assess the medical images that are, within that region and try to figure out, use those as clues to predict what type of stroke it was, or what type of cancer, or a prognosis down the line.
Right. Yeah. I think it's changing on a daily basis, but it's going to be designed to bring, I think, more improved care faster, quicker to patients. And that's what it's all about. It's all about improving health. Dr. Grant, let's pivot back to how we're talking about parallel advances in computation. How are AI and the computational methods improving the quality of research? I mean, we have all these tools here, and you've mentioned AlphaFold. What are some things that you see for the future? Just take a crystal ball here and let's get your ideas.
Yeah, so it's been transformative beyond AlphaFold. It's really had a lot of effects in how we collect data. So AI doesn't remove the need for experiment, right? We still need to perform experiments. We need to validate the models that are predicted by AlphaFold, for example. And we need new ways of collecting data on more difficult targets, for example, things in neurodegenerative diseases, intrinsically disordered proteins. These are all things that are fundamentally just very hard to study. And so we're using tools like cryo-electron microscopy, which we have over at the UBHWI Center next door. And this tool is amazing for getting pictures of proteins, individual proteins. So we take proteins and we freeze them in ice, and we take these pictures with a microscope, an electron microscope. But these pictures are very noisy. They're grainy, and they're low resolution, and they're low contrast. And so we use AI to enhance these images, to denoise them, and to help pick out pictures of these proteins. And this is really useful because now we can get pictures of how these proteins are when they're embedded in this ice, so that we can put together models and understand different conformations, different shapes of the protein from these types of experiments. And this is something that's really helped by AI. In the next several years, I can see a lot of advances in terms of how we're modeling proteins, how we're modeling how the machines move effectively. So we're not just taking pictures, but we're generating movies, and we can actually understand how they operate at a molecular, a physical, a chemical level, so that we can design new drugs, better drugs, and really get more precise about these drugs. We can understand how different proteins and mutations in people's DNA are affecting these proteins, and how we can design medicines specific for different classes of mutations, for example.
I could see where you take genetics and the genetics that we learn and the mutations in certain proteins that we know cause disease, and then partnering that with how we develop new drugs. And, new drugs, we need new drugs on the market. For example, in the neurology world, there were a lot of new drugs, but there's not so many new drugs for certain diseases. Now we need more new drugs for things like Alzheimer's, that has a huge, it's a huge problem in the country and across the world. And how do we develop more new drugs for things that are really causing devastating disease and costing our society, lots of time and money to care for patients, but also, a personal toll to both the patients that are affected and their families. So, this is not just relevant to basic science discoveries, but also relevant to the healthcare of the world. How does machine learning help sharpen the accuracy? Because my understanding of machine learning, which is a little bit limited, but that, you teach from a data set. And so how do we get new data sets to make the machine learning sharper, more crisp?
Yeah, so really, I think of machine learning and AI as really helping extract signal from noise. And in order to extract signal from noise, you have to teach the model, you have to teach the computer what is signal and what is noise, so that it can learn to differentiate between them. As humans, a lot of times we'll look at things and we can just look at a picture. Decades of training for a doctor or a radiologist can look at a picture and say, oh, I know what that is. I know what that problem is. But a computer doesn't know how to do that. So you have to train it just like you would train a person. The advantage is that we can train on very, very large data sets, and we can get many, many different kinds of images and different pathologies for these things. And the advantage of that is that it allows a computer to quickly identify things that can then be confirmed by a human in the loop. We never want to separate the AI from the human in the loop, because we have, humans have different expertise, but AI can certainly help us accelerate this and come up with new kinds of tools for identifying problems that might otherwise be missed.
That's a great summary. So let's just zoom out a second and let's try to connect all the dots between the structural biology, the moving targets that you've talked about, the machines, the biomarkers translating these signals, and then the AI imaging. And let's just talk a little bit about the personalized risk factors. So, what do you think together, either of you or both of you, that things are going to look like for a patient here in Western New York in the next 3 to 5 years, on top of the fact that we'll have our new Epic installation in 2026, which will have even more opportunities to help patients. So Vince, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, so I think a big thing, and something that was touched on just now, is that we really need larger and larger data sets. And so I know UB, we're doing a great job with multi-institutional collaborations and really bringing all these large data sets into Empire AI and the like. Specifically, for what I research, I think the next big thing is really trying to integrate these high-dimensional data sets, or these multimodal data sets. So like trying to figure out what is the biology that is behind the radiology, what is the genetics that is behind the histology, and all of these are connected, but we need to, like you said, properly train the AI to come up with these connections. And when we do, we might be able to, down the line, take radiology, take a CT scan, and learn something about what is going on in the biology of the person's tumor, of the person's stroke. And that can not only inform treatment, but it could be, new druggable targets. And really, it's all about bringing personalized medicine into the clinic. And I think that's really where we're going with AI, is, making this all about the individual patient who's there, to really personalize the medicine and personalize the technologies that we're even developing.
That's a great point. We often talk about patient-centered care, right? And this is taking patient-centered care to a new level. Tom, what do you think is going to be the impact for patients in Western New York in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I mean, the nice thing about UB in Western New York is we have so many different areas of expertise that we're tackling, different problems that we're tackling, and they all center around this central goal of improving people's health, right, in the region. And so there are areas where I'm sort of in the upstream end, and more the basic science thing, and how we can design new drugs. There are others that are more in the translational scene, right, where they're trying to do things like maybe not just design new drugs, but maybe figure out how can we repurpose existing drugs, right, which is a lot faster than having to design and get approval for an entirely new drug. And so we have all these different areas of expertise in UB. And so I think what we're really doing is we're building up databases. We're making it so that when people go to the clinic or go to the hospital or go to a doctor, the doctor can be more specific about how they're prescribing drugs or how they're giving, prescriptions for various, diseases or whatever it is. They can have precision medicine, individualized care. And that's what I think all of this coming together can really help, because no single person can integrate all of this information, but coming together with AI, we can come up with new solutions to these problems.
I think you both really made a point here that UB is at the cutting edge of healthcare here. We have 6 schools of health, and then we have, many investigators across all of UB are really focused on using AI and trying to improve the health of Western New York. And this is a real economic engine for our region. We hope that many of these things that we've talked about today will come to fruition in being new treatments and really, tell the story about UB across the country. So before we wrap up, I always ask everybody to have one takeaway of 1 or 2 sentences about kind of what your thoughts are about the future of healthcare in Western New York and how your particular projects or AI is going to change healthcare. So Vince, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I think, like I was touching on, building these multimodal data sets is key. And I think, leaning on the resources that we have here at UB is, going to be a key to success when it comes to this. We have the biobanks, we have the compute power, so not just for my projects, but for, people out there who are listening, who have their own innovative ideas. I mean, we have the resources here. So just reach out to the people who are involved and, can make magic happen.
And how grateful we are for the patients who work with us day and day. I've never been in a place where there's more support from the community. So, Tom, I'll give you the last word. What's your key takeaway about the future of healthcare in Western New York?
Yeah, I would say it's probably centered around convergence. It's lots of different areas of expertise coming together and using the resources that we have here in this area. Empire AI is incredible, but it's also just the expertise of our scientists and our clinicians here that we have, that coming together, solving all of these different problems in a way that can help practically in our region, I think is the big takeaway.
Well said. Well, I want to thank you both, and thank you to our listeners for joining us today. And we really appreciate how much you shared your insights about how AI is powering the next wave of medical research and, most importantly, patient care. Well, that's it for this episode of the UB Medicine podcast. For all of our listeners, please be sure to subscribe, download us, and join us the next time as we continue to explore the frontiers of medicine. And if you have a suggestion for a podcast, let us know that. Thanks again.